Brothers and sisters, you're encouraged to come up to the stand as well. There's overflow seating up here if you can, and then if we can try to compress to fit everyone. We'll start in a few minutes, but please feel free to come join us up here on the stand as well for extra seating. Thank you so much, brothers and sisters. Thank you for being here as we gather to celebrate the life of our loved one, Brother Jeff Henderson. We'd like to thank Sister Michelle Golightly for the beautiful prelude music, and also for Abby Henderson, who will be the chorister during this meeting. Thank you for your support and help with the music. And my name is Bishop Nielsen. But more importantly, I'm Jeff's friend. That's who I am. I love Jeff so much, and I know we all share that bond in common today. We'll begin our meeting, these funeral services, by singing an opening hymn, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. And our opening prayer will be given by Bob Stockdale.
Our Father in heaven, we bow our heads before Thee this morning in gratitude for our having known Jeff and his family for all these years, and for our experiences that we've been able to have with him, and for the love that we've developed for their family. We thank Thee for the plan of salvation, that we know that though Jeff has left his mortal body, he is alive, and we will meet him in the future. We thank Thee for Thy Son and for the atonement. Today, as we begin this, we ask a blessing upon all that will participate, that they can be able to present what they have, and that we can all love these memories and thoughts of Jeff that will happen. And especially we pray this morning for those who mourn for this loss, and especially for Monique and the family, that they can be comforted by the Holy Ghost. Father, we thank Thee for all of our blessings, and we do this in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you. And just a reminder, for anybody who's looking for additional seating, if you're outside, there's additional seating up here on the stand, so please make your way up here if you'd like. We'll proceed as follows. We'll first hear from Connor Henderson, and then we'll have a live sketch from Courtney Henderson. Then we'll have a musical number, I Know That My Redeemer Lives, sung by Melanie Henderson and accompanied by Liz Apking. Then we'll hear a talk from Andrew Henderson, and then an additional musical number, If You Could Hie to Kolob, by Liz Apking. And then we'll hear closing comments from Monique Henderson, and we'll go to that point in the meeting.
Having seen the program, initially I was glad to be going first, but I don't think it would have mattered when, in what order any of us spoke. It's just going to be hard. I also thought about, just fake crying, because then, your voice gets tight and it's hard to understand, and I could just sit here and mumble for a few minutes. But I also love and want to honor my dad. So I'm going to share a few thoughts and stories. And I hope that you can understand through the crying the things that I share. Something that I admire most about my dad was how good he was at keeping in touch with old friends, as can be seen by how full this room is. He was often, and sometimes annoyingly, on the phone with someone. And, that could often be for hours at a time, and we wouldn't know when he was going to be done. But it was important to him and important to you as his friends to keep in touch and see how things were going. And if it wasn't a phone call, then it was a fishing trip, or a motorcycle trip, or a camping trip, or a BMW trip, or many other activities that he loved and enjoyed. And many of you have memories with him. And I look forward to hopefully hearing many of those stories and those memories from you. And I think one of the best ways that we can all honor my dad is keeping in touch with those that we love and working on those relationships that are most important. And so I know I haven't always been the best at keeping in touch with certain people and old friends, but that has definitely come to the forefront of my mind and is going to be a much bigger priority for me. This next story that I'm going to share is kind of a story of legend amongst our immediate family, and many of you have probably heard it. I know the grandkids love this story. I was about 5 years old, and me and my brother Andrew and my uncle Spencer and my dad, we were going fishing, and we were fishing in a drift boat. And this was when we lived in Montana, and it had been a particularly snowy winter, and so there was lots of snow melt, and so the water was moving fairly quickly. And we got caught up in the current, and there was a tree that had fallen across the river. And the drift boat turned, and we hit the tree, and then we all got flipped out of the boat and sucked under. And me being 5, I obviously didn't understand at the time how scary and tragic that could have been. But thankfully, we all were unharmed and got out of the water. And we can see everything that was in the boat floating down the river. And I had just been at a friend's birthday party at Chuck E. Cheese. And I saw a bag of pink and blue cotton candy floating down the river. And I screamed bloody murder and started crying, "My cotton candy!" And I don't think I've seen my dad within the last year or two. Without him giving me a bag of cotton candy. And most of the time, my 3 daughters ate it. But even though he didn't always use the words, "I love you," he had his own way of showing it and saying it. one thing that I know I got from my dad is a love of poems and quotes. And I don't quite have his knack for memorizing, so I'm going to read this quote. But this is a quote from my favorite TV show, actually. Now look, this is a sad moment right here for all of us. And there ain't nothing I can say standing in front of you right now that can take that away. But please do me this favor. Lift your heads up and look around this room. Yeah? Look at everybody else in here. And I want you to be grateful that you are going through this moment with all these other folks. Because I promise you, there's something out there worse than being sad. And that's being alone and being sad. Ain't nobody in this room alone. And I'm so thankful for all of you that are here today to celebrate and remember my dad. Thank you.
I did not get the height that my brothers got from my dad. Trying to find the words to describe or sum up his life, for me, was very relatable to trying to shop for a present for him as the man who has everything. He's the man who lived and did everything. So how do you find the words for the man that did everything? Not impossible, but very hard. And so I will do my best to honor all that he was and all that he did. I recently heard that the idea in life is to die young, but as late as possible. And I think he nailed it. I think at any age he would have done that, because growing old was mandatory, but growing up was optional. And as many of you know from the stories that you have and the life that you got to live alongside him, he was still a kid till his final day. He sat on the phone not an hour before he took his last breath, adding bigger tires and new bells and whistles to his third side-by-side that had to be in the collection because this was going to be enclosed, and it had things that the others didn't, and it's just a true testament to he literally lived his entire life. I wasn't around for his childhood, but I know that Christmas was always one of his favorite times of year. He loved the season and the magic that Christmas came with, just the way people were. And while he is one of 10 siblings, they weren't all in the house at the same time when he was a little kid, being one of the older ones. But I remember hearing stories about how he would wake up at like 2 or 3 in the morning and then go wake up all his siblings so that they could go open their stockings and see what they got from Santa. They weren't allowed to open presents until mom and dad woke up, but they could at least do that. And so growing up in our house, you know, mom and dad would set a time, I think it was like 7 or 8 in the morning, that we weren't allowed to wake them up before. And I can't remember a Christmas as a kid where he didn't come wake us up at like 3 or 4 in the morning to go see what we got in our stockings and see what Santa brought us, because he was just still a kid at heart, and it was just still one of those magical times. And we would talk a lot about the different things we got over the years, and it always stood out to him, and he was always so in awe of his mother, because he would say, we weren't poor growing up, we just didn't have any money. And he didn't know. He didn't even know that until he was much older. He was obviously baptized a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He was actively involved in church and scouting throughout his adolescence. He earned his Eagle Scout, and throughout his life had the opportunity to serve in the Young Men's, helping many others find their love of scouting and outdoors activities, and earning their Eagle Scout as well. In high school, he worked 2 jobs. He had a paper route, and then he started working at a dental laboratory as the delivery guy, taking cases to and from the dentist offices and the lab. And that is how he earned his money and saved his money to pay for his mission. He served a 2-year mission in Sweden, where he, of course, fell in love with the culture and the people. He, to this day, has several friends, as my brother said, that he's kept in touch with, that served alongside him, that we actually know their kids and have spent time with them throughout our lives because of those relationships that he's so good at keeping in touch with. After his mission, he came home and lived at home for a couple of years. I think he was about 25 when they finally said, time to go. And like anyone would, he moved across the street and down 3 houses in with his sister and her husband. And thankfully, it wasn't long after that he met my mom and got married and bought a house of his own. He always joked that he didn't want to marry her for her basketball tickets at UNLV in their prime in the 80s, but it's the only way he could get the tickets. So thankfully, with my mom, he got so much more than just basketball tickets. My mom is the love of his life, and he attributed much, if not all, of his success, personally and professionally, to her, to everything she did in the day-to-day, which that's the hard stuff, is the day-to-day, to make his life better, to make his days easier. They were sealed in the temple in St. George in 1985, and I joined them a year later in 1986. And the first thing he did as a dad was give me my name. Apparently, my parents couldn't agree on baby names, and so at some point, I imagine during the pregnancy, it was decided that dad would get to name the girls and mom would get to name the boys. So I'm sure mom was certain I was a boy because dad got to name the girls and mom got to name the boys. Well, I was a girl, so my dad got to name me Courtney Shay. Shay means girl in Swedish, and so much of my life he would call me Courtney girl because that's what he named me. A couple years later, about 3 years later, Andrew joined our family, and 3 years after that, Connor joined the family. So you notice my mom, there were 2 more boys, so she got to name the rest. I don't think that was by accident. But I do think my mom likes my name, thankfully. But I think it's undeniable to say that my dad loved being a dad. On more than one occasion, he would talk about different instances. There was a distinct moment with each one of us that made him just, feel that feeling that only your little kid can give you, and if he could bottle it up and give it away, he would. I don't remember if it was Connor or Andrew, but one of them, just little kid, just hands on the cheeks. Daddy, I love you. And he cherished and treasured those moments with us that made him feel like he knew his purpose. He worked hard to provide for us. He worked hard to teach us and guide us in the gospel. He exposed us to more of what life has to offer than probably most people see in their lifetime, let alone in their youth before they move out of the house. In order to provide for all of these activities and all of the wonderful things that we got to do as a family, he worked in the dental industry. He started that job, like I mentioned, before his mission in the dental industry. And he worked with several labs throughout the years. In Vegas, he worked his way running the lab, and then he pursued opportunities in Montana, in Oregon, and in eventually Utah, where he ended with Utah Valley Dental Lab, which I know much of you are here today. Second family to him. Throughout his career, he invested in himself by continually taking courses around the country because he always wanted to know what the latest and greatest was, where things were going. I think at the peak of his career, he was one of the most sought after people to help with some of the diagnostics in cases where they'd been given to several other labs and maybe even other dentists that just weren't really sure what the plan of care should be. And he stayed involved with AACD, with Crown Council. He did dental humanitarian trips in the Dominican Republic. I know both of my brothers, who are dentists now, were able to go on those trips. I never got to go. I'm not a dentist. I see a little correlation. I'm not bitter. I need to go now, I guess. He was also involved with Smiles for Life and most recently Rivers for Hope, getting to be involved with kind of mixing activities he loved with the work that he loved. The thing that he told me and my brothers probably the most about his work was he didn't grow up wanting to work in a dental lab. That wasn't, the childhood dream. But he was grateful that he found that and that he stuck with it because that career path allowed him to create a life that was a dream. And so he kind of always attributed the sticking with it. If you don't know what you want to do, he still would talk about, I don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So I'm going to do this in the meantime, and thankfully I really love it, and it's given me the opportunity to live a life that I love. I think in order to balance all of the work and the family and church and the fun, he was definitely one that believed in putting it on a calendar and committing to it. I don't know if he got that from my mom or if that was something he had on his own, but he didn't believe in chasing fun, he believed in creating it. And I think for him, if it's not on the calendar, it's not going to happen. And I was always impressed because when he committed to something, it didn't matter if the alleged or perceived better offer came along, he stood by his commitments. And I think, as he got older in life, he was fortunate enough that anything he was offering to do with any of us was always going to be the best offer any of us were ever going to get. So there was no risk of a better offer coming along. He loved, as Connor mentioned, fishing, hiking, hunting, target shooting, motorcycles, camping trips, skiing, cycling, and somehow found ways in his spare time to do all of that when he wasn't on the phone, catching up with people. I think probably even more than doing those things, he loved teaching those things and watching his loved ones, his friends and his family, do those things and learn to love those things alongside him. He was a meticulous researcher. He liked to learn what the best, latest thing was in whatever the activity he was doing was. But also, he was a researcher in, okay, now that I know what the best thing is, how do I get the best deal on it? Because I'm not paying full price. Anything that he had was yours to use. It was always just stuff. And he always said, stuff is just meant to be used. So I appreciate that because it's allowed me to care more about people and experiences than things. Things are just a means to bring us together and let us make memories. I think, above all else, he loved being a grandpa. I think that was his favorite role he ever had. His ability to find ways to love and connect with each of his grandkids is something that I will marvel at forever. I mean, little songs, little nicknames. He would play ukatas with Chase. So I could tell stories about all of them. He built a guitar for Evan with my Uncle Steve. I know he played games with Hannah and with Penny and had little nicknames and songs for them, as well as Alice, the Princess in the Palace, and Rosie Lou Who. And our baby Jane, the newest to the bunch. I really do think that he always talked to us about how his job, once he became a dad, was to teach us and prepare us to one day live in this world without him. Because as the circle of life goes, we would have to one day. He also would tell me that, growing up, still growing up, but raising kids and being a dad and being a parent, you never really know, or you always wonder if you're doing a good job, and you never really know. And he said, I feel like I started to get to know if I was a good dad, that I was a good dad, because I watched my kids have kids and become parents. And seeing how your kids are parents kind of shows how you parented. A few days before Christmas, we had our last daddy-daughter deep talk. And it was very frustrating because, as it happens, you don't always see eye to eye on things. And he's trying to explain to me why he's right, and I'm very much like him, so I'm most certain that I'm right. And we're trying to find the words to explain why we're both right. Even though he always said it's not really who's right, it's what's right. And all he really wanted, and really what I took away from that conversation was, all he really wanted was to know how he could be a better dad and a better grandpa. And with tears in his eyes, sat in the seat next to me while I drove and just said, I will do anything to be a better dad and a better grandpa, because I live for you. I love you. You are really my reason for being here. And it meant a lot to me to see that his entire life he spent wanting to learn, wanting to improve, wanting to get better. And I'm grateful for the time that he had. I think the thing that will be the hardest is not being able to make those phone calls, not being able to catch up, not being able to turn to him and lean on him in those moments that I did, so many of us did. And I've thought a lot about what to do without that ability. And he and I would talk a lot about how you can honor and you can prepare. You honor those that came before you with your life, and you prepare for those generations in your family still to come. And so I'm humbled now at the task to honor him who came before me, and to live in such a way that will honor all that he did and all that he was, to prepare those to come still, that will, with that ripple effect that he had, live in us and be that impact that kind of carries on from the grandkids and beyond. I really tried to find or think of my favorite story just to share, and I couldn't find just one. There's the time we went fishing and I named the fish even though he told me not to. And we lost him in the dirt after we were trying to take him to clean him, and we found him, and then he got thrown away in the fridge and he never got eaten. He totally died in vain. And so he would still take me fishing, but I was not allowed to catch them if I was gonna name them. So, or how anytime I would call him with good news, he would just say to me, "I'm that girl's dad. So I guess I will leave you." Fully humbled that I'm that guy's daughter.
I know that my Redeemer lives. What comfort this sweet sentence gives. He lives who once was dead. He lives, my ever-living head. He lives to bless me with his love. He lives to plead for me above. He lives my hungry soul to feed. to silence all my fears. He lives. He lives, my kind, wise, heavenly friend. He lives and loves me too. I'm gonna read the rest of the words, I'm sorry. He lives, and while he lives, I'll sing. He lives, my prophet, priest, and king. He lives and grants me daily breath. He lives, and I shall conquer death. He lives, my mansion to prepare. He lives to bring me safely there. He lives, all glory to his name. He lives, my Savior, still the same. Oh, sweet the joy this sentence gives. I know that my Redeemer lives. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cry, everybody. I practiced. We had a hard time picking this song, and we had picked a different song, and then Courtney called me and Liz, and she said that she was looking on Jeff's Spotify, and he had one playlist called Sabbath, and there were only 3 songs on that playlist. And Courtney really felt that this song would be his last testimony to us all. And I'm sorry I couldn't sing it, but at least you got to hear the words.
So, as a boy, I idolized my dad like a lot of us do. Our dad's our hero, and I just thought mine was the coolest. Being in his presence felt safe. It was comfortable. And so, whatever he was doing, I wanted to tag along. It didn't matter if it was hunting, fishing, anything that I wasn't really that interested in. As long as I could be with my dad, I was there. I remember there was one time me and him were hunting. I was about 9 or 10 years old, and we're in the middle of nowhere. It felt like the truck was going to tip. I'm sure it wasn't at all, but as a 9-year-old boy, you don't know that. But at the same time, I felt safe because I was with my dad. And over the past couple weeks, my mind has just been racing with stories and conversations and memories that stick out, and one in particular that's stayed with me. I don't even know when we had the conversation. It was definitely before he was diagnosed with cancer and had a lot of his health issues. It was a conversation about how he'd want to be remembered and what he'd want on his gravestone. And he said, I just want 4 words. He loved, he served. And he was always serving because he loved everyone. And as a boy, I would often get roped into his serving. Whether we had to go buy groceries for somebody or mowing lawns or shoveling driveways, he would always promise to help, and I would always end up having to do it with him. And he was always willing and happy to help others, even if it wasn't convenient. I don't know how many times there were somebody who needed something in the middle of the night, and he would drop everything and help them get their car towed, or help them deal with whatever they needed. And it was just because he loved and he cared for all those around him. And it didn't matter if he just met you or you'd been friends for years. He had a way of just caring, and he was just interested in people. And it seemed like in any situation, he was around people he didn't know, he would come up and say hello, make some goofy, sarcastic joke to break the ice, and he'd make a new friend. And he treated everyone like a real friend. And I think that's why there's so many of us here today. The past 10 years, I saw a much softer side of my dad that I never expected to see. Changing diapers, wearing a kid in a baby carrier. He truly loved being a grandpa, and he loved his grandkids. And we're so grateful that we were able to make as many memories as we could with them. We were lucky enough last June to go on a trip to Hawaii, and even through all the pain and the neuropathy that he dealt with from his cancer treatment, he still always wanted to go on an adventure and do things with those that he loved. And I'll never forget, we were on the beach in Hawaii. My dad's fully clothed, sweatshirt, long sleeves, pants to block the sun. And my mom was out swimming in the ocean, and he just fully clothed walks into the ocean and bounces up and down in the waves with her. There's so many memories that all of us have with him, and I know we're going to cherish those forever. And as I've reflected over my dad's life the last couple weeks, I can't think of a better way to sum it up than exactly how he would have wanted. He loved and he served.
As Hendersons, we excel at two things: talking and crying. My heart is full of love and completely shattered at the same time right now as I look at your faces and from the different chapters of our lives that you came in to our lives and the moments that we shared. I am so grateful that you are all here. He would be pleased to see all of you, and he would be sad that he is missing out. Jeff is the love of my life. As I have walked these past 18 days, there has been so many thoughts and so many feelings. But one thing that is certain, December 26th brought shock and heartbreak. It wasn't supposed to have happened yet. He would have told you he had an expiration date. And that date was July 17th, 2027. I do not sew, but somehow the word thread has been one that has been on my mind. Because Jeff was the thread that binds us all together. He was a life enthusiast, a lover of people, a man of faith. He was a cheerleader for those he worked with and championed. I appreciated that when we would be in social situations with coworkers and he was introducing them to other people, he would say, "This is Matt or Joe," or "We work together." Not, "This is so-and-so and he works for me." He was a team player. In his life, he served in many capacities. In our church community, his favorites were being a home teacher, being with the young men, because that growing old is mandatory, growing up is optional. And more recently, he had the opportunity to serve in the young single adult stake. And I know to the young men that he served and to the young single adult men and to all of us, he appreciated the many lessons that you taught him. The people he loved, first his siblings, you had him the longest, and I am jealous. To our children, he loved you. To our in-laws, he was so happy when you became part of our family. Not just because of what we gained from you joining our family, but for the love and the happiness that you bring to our children. And to our grandchildren, Chase, Evan, Alice, Hannah, Rosie, Penny, Jane, you are his best gift. To the nieces and nephews and cousins and aunts and uncles, he loved being with you and hearing about your lives. To our friends and the many shared memories and adventures, thank you. We're going to now open things up if some of you would like to share a memory or a thought. But no, I don't know what time it is. So we'll go to about 11:20 with that, but know that there will be an opportunity at the luncheon afterwards to continue. So I will turn the time over to you, and thank you all for being here. We love you.
I'll just take advantage of sitting on the front row real quick to say that when we moved to the Cascade Fourth neighborhood in 2015, Jeff Henderson was assigned as our home teacher. And he was just so warm and welcoming and would come and share faith-filled messages and his testimony of Jesus Christ with us. He and Monique invited us to their home for dinner. I admired their Lazy Susan, and so they showed me how to make my own Lazy Susan. It was just incredible. They invited us to come over to their hot tub and just walk through their house and go to the hot tub. But then even better is when we got back from an out-of-country trip. We were gone for a year, and so when we returned, Jeff wasn't our home teacher anymore, but he was still our friend. He would mentor my children, help them with business plans, and I admire him so much. I loved having him share with me his testimony of Jesus Christ. And I know that Jeff still lives, and because of his life, I want to know Jesus better.
I'm Joan, Jeff's twin sister. So a couple memories I have of him. One of my favorite, because we did it together. I don't know, we weren't really in sync like they say twins are or whatever, other than a few times. And the first time we were 5 years old, and I am going to say this experience, and somehow both of us got it in our heads. And we went into my bedroom, stripped off our clothes, and jumped on the bed naked, just squealing and laughing. And that freedom, and I guess if you're by yourself, I don't think it's as fun as if you're doing it with your brother or sister. So, it's still a favorite memory. I remember as a teenager, he would joke about this song, and I don't remember the name of it. That's one about at night I'm a junk food junkie, and he would joke about buying Twinkies, and he did, Twinkies and donuts and stuff like that, and that he was going to live a long life because he'd be well preserved from the preservatives in it. What was another one? Oh, so for our 60th birthday, it was like, what do I get the man who has everything? And so I was in Cosmos World Market, and I was looking at books and came across a Dr. Seuss book, which was, not that I read a lot of those books, but one was a happy birthday book, Happy Birthday to You. And I was like, this is it. And as I walked out the store, I looked at the printing date, and it was 1959, the year of our birth. And it's like, this is just perfect. So when I gave it to him, I found out he collected Dr. Seuss books, and he already had that book. So what do you get the man who has everything? You give him something he already has. So, thank you.
I'm Abby. I'm Jeff's niece. Sorry, I was like, I'll sit on the stand because I'm leading the music, with jokes on me because I had the perfect view for like the biggest criers in our family. But the past couple of years, I had gotten relatively close to Jeff, and one of my favorite things was every couple months or so I'd call him and we'd talk on the phone. And I lived in St. George for college, and there was one time when I called him, and sometimes our chats would be 30 minutes long, sometimes they'd be 2 hours long. But frequently when I was driving up to visit, I would call him and just talk on the phone. But then after college, I moved up to Salt Lake, and when he found out I lived in Salt Lake, he was like, oh, well, that's where I go for my check-ins. Let's start going out to lunch after my appointments. So that's what we do. And usually what happened is a couple days before his appointments, I'd get a text from him, and he'd say, hey, my appointment's, this Monday. Are you down to grab lunch? And if I had a meeting, I would always say, oh, sorry, I can't come to this meeting. Something came up. And I'd make sure to go get lunch for him. But there was one time where we would typically try and decide where to go. And there was one time where I had proposed a place, and he jokingly but also seriously said, we can't go there. And I was like, well, why not? He said, well, they don't have Mountain Dew. And so after that, I knew that as long as a place had Mountain Dew, he didn't really care where it was or what kind of food it was. As long as there was Mountain Dew there, he was fine. And then another memory that I have of him that I really love is my family went out to his cabin, and we were going to get ice cream, and my dad gave my older sister his credit card and said, make sure you pay for the ice cream. And we get there and we go to pay for the ice cream, and Jeff says, well, no, I'm paying. And my older sister Morgan looks at Jeff and says, well, my dad said he pays. And Jeff goes, well, I'm older, so I'm paying. And so, that was a really good memory. Obviously, there are a lot of other great memories I have. But I'll just share one last one. Probably, I don't even know how long ago it was, but Jeff started Jingo, and he came to our house, which is Christmas bingo. And initially it was you could either win a box of candy or $1. And we always took the $1, but that eventually grew into a tradition every year where we would all get together and have a big Jingo night. And it was the only event of the year where I would cancel everything I had that day to make sure I made it. You know, it always led to it was a lot of noise because we're a noisy family. But this past year, one of the best things that happened, it was pretty funny, is we're sitting there and it's probably 15, 20 of the nieces and nephews, and at one point we're talking about money and taxes come up, and Jeff goes, "You know the best thing about this table? No taxes." And so he was just always happy and cracking jokes, and I'm grateful for that. So yeah.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here today to honor Jeff Henderson. I am Mike Rowland, and I was married to Monique's mother before she passed away. We always refer to Monique as Nikki, her mother's choice, and we all grieve with her today. Jeff Henderson was too young and too good a man to leave us so soon. I guess it proves that life isn't fair. He was a good husband, a good father, who loved and cared for his wonderful family. All you have to do is look at the results of his goodness, his children. Children any one of us would be grateful to have. I am proud to have been a small part of Jeff's life. My wife always cared about Jeff and respected him for the good man that he was. I know deep down that he is going to a special place now, and he deserves it. One thing I can assure you of, Nikki's mother was always happy Jeff and Nikki got married, and was always very proud of them and their children and the exemplary life that they led. Jeff, my friend, you may be gone, but you are not forgotten. May you rest in peace. You left a great legacy, Jeff, that very few of us will match. Thank you.
My name is John Leach. I'm from that chapter, one of those chapters, the mission. And I thought I should explain the crying thing. I'm not a Henderson, but we went in the same mission. And the mission president, Spencer Jensen, said, "Before you leave this mission, every one of you will learn to cry." What he didn't tell us was how to stop. So it's his fault that you inherited that. I met Jeff in the summer of 1977. He was a young man from Las Vegas. I lived in northern Nevada, up in Sparks, Nevada. In those days, they had 2-week missions. I don't know if some of you might be old enough to remember that. And so he went on a 2-week mission from Las Vegas up to northern Nevada. And there, we were having the missionaries in our home. They were teaching someone who was a friend, and Jeff came. And so we met there, and I think they were having a discussion over here. And Jeff and I were over here just chatting and talking and just name swapping and name dropping. Great to meet him. So it was a shock to me about 14 months later as I was getting off a train in Sweden. We were having a transfer. A new missionary was coming to take my place, and I was getting on the train to go somewhere else. And who jumps off the train? Jeff Henderson. So he's replacing me, and we hadn't seen each other since that time. What a great, great surprise, and got to hug each other. But what even became better was that we then had the opportunity to serve together in the office. And we used to call the office the morgue until Jeff arrived. Because Jeff had that personality that brought everything to life. Now, he gave all you kids nicknames. Well, let me give you his. We called him Happy Henny because He taught us how to sing and dance in the office because that's who he was. You know, I never think the Lord requires us to be clones of one another. He doesn't expect us to be all the same. We're not cookie cutters, and he knows that. And he wants us to use what he gives us, the talents, the things that we are. And Jeff mastered that. He never let things change who he was. He took his talents and his abilities and then used them in the scenario that he was in, whether it was with people. And certainly he did. He loved and he served the people in Sweden. And I didn't realize that that's how you got your middle name, Courtney. I know I owe the family an apology. I was one of those frustrating phone calls. So to you, I'm very, very sorry. But I generally want to say thank you, Monique, and your children for sharing him with us and making it so even though, yes, there was a chapter in our life when I got to be up close and personal with him, those phone calls became lifelines because of who he was and how you'd feel after you spoke to Jeff Henderson. I'm grateful for him. I'm grateful for the life that he lived. And I leave these thoughts with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
My name's Mike Black, and I've known Jeff since '95, and we got together and we became thick as thieves. And he used to tell me that I was a low-maintenance friend, and later he told me that I was the highest maintenance, low-maintenance friend that he had. He said we'd been through a lot together, but most of it was my fault. Actually, the opposite of that is true. He had a poem that I loved, and I must have bugged him 300 times to tell me about the P Little Thrigs. So if you've never heard that poem, have it recited to you from someone else, maybe from Andrew or Connor or Courtney. Many times while I was driving, he and I spoke. I didn't realize that, but Montana's a big state, and he probably kept me alive, and I probably kept him alive, because we were driving many times at different times. One of my favorite memories with Jeff is we went down and toured the Hoover Dam for 3 hours and 45 minutes because his neighbor was on the Las Vegas water board. He told me once, because he and I worked with the youth quite a bit, where else can you stay up late, play with matches, and eat lots of junk food? Jeff was truly a good friend, and he had a unique sense of humor that I think you can tell from the people who have spoke here today. I know my life would not be the same without my fond memories of pedaling. And I used to wake up Monique at about 5 to 6 in the morning to go bike riding with Jeff. And she finally told Jeff, meet him at the top of Zimmerman. He can't come to our house and knock on the door that early. I so loved him, and I loved their family.
Back in 1988, we had lived in our Salt Lake City for all our lives, but there was a big problem with the building business, and we decided through the Lord that we better move to Las Vegas. But we didn't know anybody in Las Vegas. Well, our brother-in-law, Kyle Latimer, called up his good friends, Monique and Jeff Henderson, and said, Bill needs a place to stay when he comes to figure things out on how to move his family to Las Vegas. And Bill said, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go live in people's homes. I don't even know them, and they won't want me there. And he said, no, Jeff and Monique will want you there. And Bill came and lived with Jeff and Monique for 6 months before we moved down. And when we came down to find a house, And of course, we're living with Jeff and Monique for a couple of days, and I said, Monique, all I want is a house like what you've got here. I want a house like this. And we ended up moving just a couple of blocks away in a house like theirs. And we lived in their ward for the next 4 years. Bill has spent many hours on the boats with Jeff and brought in the big fish at Flaming Gorge. They have truly been wonderful friends, and we love them, and we'll miss Jeff a lot. We love you, Monique, and Courtney, and Andrew, and Connor, who we remember as little ones. We love you. Say this in the name of Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen.
I've been thinking a lot. We, in our family, joke about the older people we talk about, and now we are the older people we talk about. And, with different things happening in our family as old age brings us, I've been thinking about what's the point of taking someone so full of life and as my brother-in-law struggles, like, what's the point of taking someone who lives every minute to serve? His body slowly doesn't allow him to, but he keeps finding ways. I know one thing for sure, heaven just got a lot funner and a lot louder. And other people are talking a lot less now. Up there. And a lot more down here now. We get to talk more, right, Courtney? What I wanted to say was one word, and that's remember. When Mom left us too soon, I just kept thinking of remember. And I always said it would be like Dan and Ann, and it sure was, because it wasn't too long before Dad rested beside her. And I really got thinking remember. And I've spent a lot of time remembering my childhood, my home. And the peace I felt in my home, and the love I felt in my home, and the spirit I felt in my home. And those memories have kept me through my struggles, having hope, and in these things where I say, what's the point? I know what the point is. And I feel, sitting here, the love of family and the love of my Heavenly Father. And I was the fifth of 10 kids, and so I was just the punk sister. I was too young to be one of the older kids and too old to be one of the younger kids, so I felt a little lost. And Jeff really didn't want a lot to do with me other than tease me and beat me up once in a while. But when I graduated and Jeff came off his mission, all of a sudden I got to be one of the older kids. And he would have parties at the house in which we would play King Elephant, which is still my favorite game to play, but I can't get anyone to play it with me. When I'd go to girls' camp, they'd play with me, but
As funny and hilarious as Jeff was, if you didn't get to see his imitation of a chicken, you never experienced how funny he was. And that was one of my memories. But when he left off to school, I was kind of a shy girl and didn't know how to create my own fun. I was too shy to do it. He said to me, I'm like, what am I going to do on my weekends now? Jeff's not here to create the fun. And he said, Julie, don't wait around for something to happen. It's up to you to make it happen. And Jeff never waited around for something to happen. He made it happen. And because of that, our family and extended family has gathered and remembered, and the deep love, and obviously there's so many friends and neighbors here, but one thing I loved is the only good thing I can think of him getting cancer when Mom had hers was that they had each other. To really understand the worry and the pain, and Jeff told me about some of their talks. And that's how we learn to love others and understand them. And there is a point, and our Heavenly Father knows that even today, His passing brings us together. And we have hope, because I know that Mom and Dad were there to greet him. And I will just say this, one of the best things about Jeff is Monique. And another one of the best things about Jeff is Monique. And really the greatest thing about Jeff is Monique. And behind their backs, we all say that in our family. And we love you so much, Monique, and that's really what I come up to say. You're one of us. And Jeff made sure of that. And really the last thing that I really love about Jeff is Monique. And her sweet family, and we've had time to be with them and just love it. And I've spent too long, but I'm so grateful for the strength that it gives us to come together. I love my Heavenly Father, and I know He loves each of us, and I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ again.
I'm Rick Cavland, and Henderson and I met in Sweden all those years ago. We were the duo known as Javi and Hannig. I was the dark side, he was the light side. But we had the opportunity, the privilege, to serve with each other. And men like John Leach that come up here, the office had a horrible reputation, and it was people like him that coming there, it became within a short time, it was we only got to work about 4 hours in the evening after we were doing all the office stuff. He was the secretary to the president, and which was a challenge for him because he's pretty extroverted and had to keep a lot of secrets. And I was the financial clerk and couldn't add 2 and 2 together, so we were a pair. But we that group, because of the type of spirit someone like him could bring into it, and that we were one of the top baptizing districts in the whole mission, even though we worked about 1/3 of the time of all the rest. But he, I called him Song and Dance Henderson. I've got pictures of him dancing in the office, and I remember one time President Jensen came out and he was trying to get us all laughing. I think he was sitting in the garbage can or something, doing something goofy, but it didn't matter what was going on. I mean, you could have some pretty tough times, and he could lift you up right away. But we planned then. We both had a great love of the outdoors. You've heard about his hunting and fishing and other exploits and that, but that was my background. I came from the country, and we'd planned then, that we'd cross paths again, and we've chased chuckers and quail in the Mormon mountains, and fished on the gorge and the rivers, and chased geese out here west, and we've seen a lot of country, seen a lot of wonderful things, some wonderful adventures, and it was always good that he was there. We'd have both probably been in jail. He always told me, though, that if we ended up there, he'd make sure he was there with me. So, and I knew he meant it. So, I knew we had to come home and report to Monique, though. So we had to watch ourselves. But the thing, and most of you obviously know him pretty well, but the thing that I would tell anyone was his hallmark, was just his outlook on life. Indeed, his love of people. We were only companions officially. We worked together for a long time, but we were only companions officially for 3 weeks, and we saw more success in that 3 weeks probably than the whole rest of the time I was out there, I think. But he, and some of this obviously really personally you can't repeat in public, but he loved Monique with a passion. And we've been on vacation with them. We've spent time with them when they lived in Nevada and other places and that. But when she called after he'd passed, I could just feel the wind, the air go right out of the room. He lent a lot to life for a lot of people. And he loved one so proud of his kids and grandkids, and always, I'm surprised the world's in as bad a shape as it is, because in the discussions we'd have, we thought we'd solved most of those problems. Sitting over in that, his lodge in Manila, or his house here, or wherever we were, in the cab of the truck and stuff, but out on the boat. But he was always optimistic. I think just being around him always gave us more hope, when there wasn't supposed to be any. So I love him like a brother, and I'll miss him. But I know, and I can testify to you, if we do our part, we'll see him over the ridge, around the bend. They're in the next clearing. And he'll be singing and dancing while we see him there. I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
My name's Lynn Bunch, and I guess you'd say I'm part of the Montana contingency. I got to know Jeff in Montana when we both lived there. My wife and I moved down here a few years ago, but I've had a project this last year of abridging several thousand pages of journal entries. And I was reading in my journal recently, the year was 1991, and I was reading about a motorcycle ride that Jeff and some other friends participated in. When I first met Jeff, I grew to love him immediately because we had a common interest. We both loved motorcycles. And back then, we were doing dirt bike riding. And as the years, I don't remember what year they left, but as the years went on, I would find Jeff in my journal entries quite often because of experiences and fun times that we had writing. I always appreciated his sense of humor. He could, have a crash and go down, didn't get hurt, but he'd get up and he could make a joke out of it and laugh about it, and we could share many good memories and good times with that. Later, when we moved down here, Jeff continued to take care of us. He organized a motorcycle ride throughout southern Utah to some of his favorite places, and he invited the Montana contingency to come down and join him, and he guided us on a trip that we really enjoyed. So it was fun to reconnect with him in that way. I guess my parting comment would be this. A couple of days after Christmas, as I'd been writing in my, or reading my journal, I came across Jeff's name, and I turned to my wife and I said, I need to call Jeff. I haven't talked to him in a while. I wonder how he's doing. Well, we got busy with the holidays and things, and I didn't get it done. And then a few days later, I got a call from my good friend Bob Stockdale from Montana, informing me that Jeff had passed. And I was surprised, but I was saddened. And I thought, I had an opportunity to call him a few days ago when I thought about it, and I didn't do it. So I guess my message to you would be, if there's people in your life that you love and appreciate and want to share feelings with, and the impulse comes, don't wait. Do it now, while you can. I'm going to miss Jeff, his family. I know I knew his kids when they were young, but they wouldn't remember me probably. But I just want you to know how much I appreciated the friendship with Jeff over the years and his family. So, thank you.
I know we're over time and I apologize, but not enough not to be here.
I just am doing this so that when we get together in the hereafter, I catch heck from Jeffy for this. Holding up his arrangements. I come with two purposes. First of all, I had no idea that Jeffy was a dancer, And there was a point in his recovery that I was shopping in Costco when I got a call from Jesse with good news. And so in Costco in Las Vegas, I did a jig. It would probably be like a leprechaun jig or something in the midst of people and great deals. I was so happy that he had such good news. My second reason for holding up the show is for a little angel called Julie Adams, and she was someone special to Jeffy. And if she were here, she would say something like this: "How the heck are you, Jeffy?" She recognized his name on caller ID and would say, "Jeffy, how are you doing?" Jeffy didn't have a chance to be anything but fun coming for such a beautiful big family. And then when he went into that first job up above the Plush Horse in Las Vegas, he got in with quite a bunch of fun lovers, and they had as much fun as they had piles and piles of cases. And Craig would come home from work and tell me the shenanigans they pulled, and oh my goodness, I love that boy. So you'd call us the Vegas, Idaho contingent. We went on a goofy ride through Yellowstone Park when Jeffy was maybe, I don't know, 18 or 19, and I don't know how we traveled by day because we laughed all night. And I am so grateful for his fingerprint in our life. And I have to agree with everybody. Monique is the best. And I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
How fun is that to hear Jeff being referred to as Jeffy? Because if anybody's a man's man, it's Jeff, isn't it? But he's also, I know he's a woman's man as well, because there's no way in the world he could have ever gotten Monique if he didn't have something special going on there, because Monique is the best. I mean, you're just the best. In fact, walking up here, I'd see Monique doing what she does best, and that's just loving on people. This morning, she happens to be loving on her grandkids. Just through this whole thing, it's so fun to think about the memories that we have of Jeff, isn't it? So I went back to my text. I'm like, man, let's think of some memories with my text. I'm just going to read a couple of texts to you, and I'll be done. Steve Call here. You've been on my mind lately. How are things? This is Jeff. Thanks for checking in. I'm really well as far as the cancer. Still taking chemo. Side effects still a struggle. Broke some ribs, high in my back, and cracked a few in my front a few weeks ago. Seem to be okay now. How are cracked ribs? Doesn't sound good. Who are you boxing? Jeff, I came off my dirt bike up in the Uintas. Ouch. You're out of high school, right? Not between my ears, Jeff says. Next, this was during the summer. This was in let's see, where are we? July 28th. This is me. Are you in town or out at your place? In town. Can you accept visitors, or here's a phone call better? Visitors are fine if they've showered this month. Sweet, I showered on Independence Day. Can I come over? That would be fine. And then finally, I had the opportunity to serve with Jeff in the young single adult stake here in Orem. And let's see here, where are we? Here we go. Oh, and he said he was apologizing here. President, I'm really sorry I missed this meeting. I don't have a good excuse. I slept for 16 hours straight. I haven't crashed like that in a while. What do I need to do to make it up? Me. I'm so jealous. 16 hours sounds awesome. And then we talked about a couple of things that he could do. And this is him. He says, "It was great to meet with the ward for sacrament yesterday. It was a powerful reminder of an ordinance we all too often take for granted. It was wonderful to see the brothers and sisters. I didn't realize it was the first sacrament meeting with the new bishopric." I'd like to end this morning, at least from what I'm saying, the same way that I've heard Jeff end so many talks that I've heard him give. And that is that both Jeff and I know that Jesus Christ lives, that he is our Savior, he is our Redeemer. And Jeff knows better now than he knew a month ago that that is true. And I say this in the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
Thank you all for your wonderful words today during this tribute to our beloved friend, Jeff Henderson. I don't know, anyone who has an iPhone knows that you get pictures served up to your phone every once in a while. And today, I don't know, during the meeting, I don't know if it was Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk listening to us, I have a picture on Flaming Gorge of my dad holding a 35-inch lake trout. And Jeff was on this boat with us, so really cool timing. I also, this might sound funny, maybe a week after Jeff died, I got a text from Jeff. And of course, it was Monique texting me, but it was another picture of a fish. And I told her, I was like, "You can't do that to me." I held out hope for a second, like that Jeff was texting me. But Connor said something earlier today, and as I parked my car to come in the parking lot, I saw two people that are sitting in this room that I didn't know, and I don't know where you are, but I heard the words, "It's been a while since I've seen you," and they hugged. And and then when I came in the room, everyone was hugging each other, and you can just feel the love from this group of people. And the backbone of that love is Jeff's life and his legacy. And that is true. We felt that in our neighborhood. We saw that in our ward. Courtney and Andrew, Courtney's point was that Jeff loved being a dad, and Andrew said that Jeff loved being a minister. In those, not in those exact words, but he loved to lead. Jeff was a leader. Jeff took our youth. He wasn't even working with our youth, but he took our youth out to his cabin a few times, and we went boating and we went fishing. And I wrote some other things. We did hatchets, razors, skiing. I actually caught a rabbit with my bare hands at his house. Ping pong tournaments. Jeff was a better fisherman than every person in this room combined. He was very good. And when we got out there, he had caught 28 kokanee salmon. And between 6 of our young men and a few leaders, we started one tray of salmon. He taught me how to make it with the butter and the lemon pepper. And we just kept making trays, and we ate all 30 fish that night we got there. And Jeff just thought that was the funniest thing in the world. But Jeff, on that same trip, gave a devotional and bore his testimony and taught our young men that no matter what the circumstances are in your life, and he mentioned his own physical health and his ailing health. He talked about the pills that he had to take each day that, they made him feel sick, and he talked about all the challenges that he had, and he said that he just had the strongest faith in Jesus Christ. And that left an indelible impact on me personally, on the other leaders that were there, and on the young men who still talk about Jeff and those trips. For anyone who might be wondering, where is Jeff now? I want to bear my testimony that Jeff is in paradise with our Father in heaven and with Jesus Christ. His Spirit lives on, and all of us will pass through the veil at some point. That's a reality of this mortal life, is that we will all pass away, but I testify that our spirits will live, and that there will be a beautiful day of resurrection, and that is the gospel of Jesus Christ, that our spirits and our bodies will be reunited. The resurrection is the reuniting of the spirit and the body in an immortal state. no longer subject to disease or death. Because of the fall of Adam and Eve, we're subject to physical death, which is the separation of our bodies and spirits. But through the atonement of Jesus Christ, we will be resurrected and we will be saved from physical death. In the Bible, in 1 Corinthians 15:22, it says, "For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ shall all be made alive." I know that that's true, and I know that we will see Jeff again. To Jeff's wonderful wife, Monique, and to his kids and his grandkids, Jeff is awesome. We love Jeff. And I know that you will see Jeff again. We will all see him again. We love Jeff, and Monique, we love you so much. And I failed to mention that on those trips, Monique went to the cabin 2 days prior to set up and to stock the fridges, and she went 2 days post to clean. So she was the real MVP of the trip. So thank you, Monique. I share this testimony of the atonement of Jesus Christ, and I thank all of you for being here today and for the wonderful spirit that we feel. And lastly, I want to recognize the spirit during the beautiful song that Melanie sang, and then the rest of the words that she spoke to us. The feelings that we had during that song and during the rest of throughout this funeral those come from Heavenly Father, who loves each of us. And I testify of that and say that in the name of Jesus Christ, amen. Once again, we thank everyone for all of your participation here in this meeting today. Immediately following the song and the prayer, there will be a lunch that's served. We have a large group, and so we're hoping that the food lasts. If it doesn't, then please enjoy a second lunch at your own home after. But everybody is invited to join for lunch, and I would just ask that this kind of middle front section, if we can allow them to get out and serve themselves first as a family. If we all can make that happen, that would be appreciated. We'll close our funeral services by singing "God Be With You Till We Meet Again." That's number 152. And the closing prayer will be given by Jeff's friend, Dick Wimmer.
Our kind and gracious Heavenly Father, we are so grateful to have been here for this celebration of life of Jeff Henderson. It was wonderful to learn more about what a loving husband and father and brother and son and friend that he was. We're grateful, Father, for the plan of salvation and the opportunity that it provides us to extend these important earthly relationships. Father, Jeff was a memory maker. Bless us to reflect on the memories that we all have with him and use those memories to help us in this period of grieving. We learned a lot today about what a wonderful friend Jeff was to so many. I think we all thought that he was our best friend, but clearly he was everyone's best friend. Father, bless us to extend his legacy by being a friend like Jeff. I say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.